Hmm. Be good to go if you want to get this started. We're good. Thank you very much, and welcome to our regular meeting of council of October 22nd, 2024. Hopefully, before I call the meeting to order, we're going to have more success on. So we did. Makes it very. I'm not sure if there's a way we can just shut our
speakers off.
computer speakers. Well, we haven't called a meeting to order yet. We're just saying very technical issues for anybody who's listening on the. Yeah, they've had a look at it, so is. We are going to be calling the meeting to order very shortly, but are we good? Is the sound now? Okay, so. Are we going to hear the gentleman speak? Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just say unplug the speakers because we're not gonna hear him. Well,
We had multiple.
so we're having a bit of difficulties. Dave, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
We're just getting, so when we are speaking and literally 30 seconds later, we are hearing ourselves.
I can hear you, but I'm not getting that same feedback that you're getting, like the delay.
Is
Go to your YouTube window and YouTube.
They changed the way they were doing it, some of the. Yes. What is it? Just shut everything down. Volume monster for a minute.
yes, please. So for the people that are on, just bear with us. We're trying to get our Zoom back on track. Thank you. So hopefully we can get this on. So again, I'll repeat myself. I think it's for the fourth time now. So I would like to call this meeting to order, Madam Clerk.
needs to be.
We have her over the video.
Say no, thanks.
That voice, that speaker,
Yes.
Click-
that's not the broadcast.
Click on, click on the actual mute. There we go. Okay, let's retry this. So we'll again try to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk?
Be it resolved that this regular meeting now open at 6:05 PM, moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, second by Councillor Bajelli.
All in favor? Motion is carried. Is there any opening remarks from members of council? Seeing none, moving on to the adoption of the agenda.
Be it resolved, be approved as amended to reflect in section 16.1, October 31st meeting should read Committee of Adjustment at 8:30 AM, not the Committee of the Whole. Moved by Councillor Bajelli, second by Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. Any questions on the adoption of the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Is there any discussion? None. Moving on to our delegation. So let's try this again. So good evening, Dave. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine. If you'd like me to get started, I will share my screen with you.
Yeah, that would be great. And just for the public, so this was quite a lengthy presentation. I think we're going to try to get a grasp of everything, but in a more condensed, so we're not going to be here for multiple hours. So I'll let you take it from here, Dave. And if would you prefer going through, or do you want question as we move along?
That's entirely up to you. I'm flexible either way, and you're quite right. I did shorten this up to try and get it out to you in a quick and higher level, maybe review.
Well, for my purpose, I would maybe suggest we'll go with question as we go along, because it could be lengthy and then at the end to come up. So as we move along, if I need to interrupt, we'll take questions from members of the council as we move forward.
Sure.
So you can take it from here if you're ready to go, Dave.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm glad to make this presentation for you tonight. We'll talk about asset management at a high level, just to set kind of the stage, and we'll talk about it from an Ontario perspective. And really the thrust of this was based on a discussion that I'd had with the Director of Works there a few weeks ago, and with respect to updating what the replacement costs and program costs may be based on more current unit costs. Just a definition of asset management. There's dozens of definitions out there, but this one I kind of go back to is asset management's a framework for making cost-effective resource allocation, programming, and management decisions. It combines engineering principles with sound business practices and economic theory, and provides tools to facilitate a more organized, logical, and comprehensive approach to decision-making. So this is from the Transportation Association of Canada, but you could apply that definition to any asset. So municipalities, and I was a municipal guy for over 30 years, are in the business of delivering services. So service delivery is dependent upon assets. Everything's dependent on assets. Roads, bridges, water, wastewater, our fleet, our parks, our offices, etc. Maintenance of those assets in good condition is critical to ensuring service delivery. So almost every aspect of service delivery falls under our asset management umbrella. I think the province started to realize there might have been a bit of an asset management problem out there quite a while ago. This cut and paste or excerpt here is from 2012, and I've highlighted initially a sentence in there that says asset management requires a thorough understanding of the characteristics and condition of infrastructure assets, as well as the service levels expected from them. So we're setting the stage to be basing our program on the assets. And then once we've done that, finally, it requires the development of a financial plan, which is the most critical step in putting the plan into action. So really what we need to do is decide what has to be done to keep the assets in good condition and what does that equate to. What happens in a lot of places, and I'm not sure how it's undertaken there, but in a lot of municipalities, I have to prepare a plan and they tell me this is the fixed budget. So an underfunded plan, quite often is the case, is a plan to fail. So I think we have to be conscious of that too. So asset management's a team effort and it requires that cross-discipline or departmental interaction. There's quite a bit of history that goes with asset management in Ontario. OREG 58817 came into effect in the end of December in 2017. There were a number of deliverables and steps to getting to where we are right now. Most importantly, I think going forward, the next major milestone will be an asset management plan, which you had in place by July 1st this year. Requires an asset management plan that includes level of service targets by July 1st, 2025. So that's going to be the next major step. Some of the key takeaways from the regulation are that the asset management plan has to sustain the condition of the assets or maintain the current levels of service. That requires budget, and it requires a plan that's developed through selection of the lowest cost life cycle activity. I'll talk about that in a few slides coming up. The asset management plan has to be approved by the executive lead. It has to be approved by council, and the status of the plan has to be reported on annually. One of the things in the plan which seems to be causing a bit of grief is that it says that you have to have a 10-year work plan in place. And my suggestion is that there's a number of other conflicting pieces of information in there. Is the actual 10-year work plan is not as important as ensuring adequate funding. So what I like to do is recommend that we get to the funding level that will sustain the assets, because we have other regulations that say we have to look at the bridges every 2 years. We have to prepare our asset management plan based on data that's no more than 2 years old, and so on. So we can't really nail down this road will be done this year for 10 years going forward. I think we have to keep that in mind. I think it's much more important to nail down how much money do we need to make that happen. What's an asset management system? And it is not just the software by itself. Software is a part of the system. The system is how the business is executed. In effect, it's a standard operating procedure. Council's involvement and understanding is critical. Why? Because council is ultimately responsible. And there's a lot of things that boxes that have to be ticked to get there. We have to have regulatory compliance, the resultant strategy and work plan that comes out of that plan may not be as first envisioned. And the more informed everyone is, the easier it is to further communicate that information and make decisions. So I suggest that, asset management frequently should be more of a not one time only, a report every couple of years kind of thing. Should be talked about a bit more frequently, because it is a complex subject and it takes that discussion to get there. So it's an opportunity to explain the rationale and the potential outcomes if not is followed. So asset management is simple and it's complex at the same time. It's simple at that 100,000 foot level when we discuss the principles. It gets quite a bit more complex when we get into the details, and especially when we get into cross-asset integration, because it might be that you've got a road system and a water system, and in an urban area or a built-up area, the water system may in fact be driving the overall plan because you've got to do the water, so it makes sense that you do the road at the same time. So it takes an iterative process, meaning that you look at both the high level and the detail level on a continuing basis, floating back and forth between those perspectives, so that you can make up a proper plan to go forward. It's dynamic, and I'll repeat that probably in the next slide or two. It's not a one-time event, and it has to be ingrained into our daily, weekly, monthly work processes. So we can make a decision based on the information we have, but if that information changes, the decision or whatever process or projects or whatever is going forward, that could change with additional information. So the concept of the plan being dynamic has to be instilled throughout the organization. And as I said, I knew I'd repeat myself, asset management is dynamic. The information is regularly and frequently updated, or at least it should be. So some assets we review at a 2-year interval. Bridge, it's regulated that we do that. I suggest you do that for the roads, or perhaps no greater than a 4-year interval. And the report that comes out of those should be similarly frequent for the condition of the assets, as well as updating the annual status of the plan, so we can measure the progress that we've made. Important because it'll allow changes in trends to be identified. So if we measure the condition over time, we can start to identify if we're winning or losing the race. Is the condition staying the same? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? So that'll help us revise the program or develop, revise it or redevelop the program to make sure that we're going to at least keep the assets in the same condition. So selecting the right treatment at the right condition is based on that current information. So what it does effectively is balance cost, risk, and benefit. Regardless of the asset, the process to create a plan, and you have the cumulative effect now for the plan that you prepared for all your assets, is we have to look at that system or asset group condition. Out of that comes the needs analysis. The bottom right-hand corner is several different performance models and the anticipation of how the system will perform. It's not your system. It gives different funding levels, and then we implement the program, and then we do our maintenance, and we repeat. So that's why it's dynamic, because this is an ongoing process, and we got to keep that in mind, and we got to keep updating every part of the process on a regular basis. So the asset management concept, and I'll talk about this a bit more in the next slide, is to optimize available funding and asset service life. Treatments and improvements have to be undertaken at the appropriate condition of the asset. So the right treatment at the right time, that'll be a recurring theme too, is earlier in the life cycle is better, is what we're really saying, because at the top end of these curves, if we look at the center at the bottom there, we've got 4 different deterioration curves for hot mix asphalt, and they vary just by traffic count. But basically, you can see I've put in treatments that we'd expect to do at those conditions. So at the top end of the curve, we're going to do lesser cost treatments. And as we slide down the curve, it's going to cost more money to repair the road or maintain the road or whatever. Just like to highlight some of the nomenclature we've used here. 1 to 5, you would see that in the report. 6 to 10, and adequate or now are phrases that are used using the inventory manual technology. If you have a recommendation in your report that says resurfacing and it's identified as a 6 to 10 year need, it does not mean that you wait 6 to 10 years to do that. As you can see by the curve, let's go to the very rightmost curve there, right where it says resurfacing. If we waited 6 to 10 years, you can see the condition will be much worse, and it will require a much more intense or expensive treatment. So really those names of 1 to 5 and 6 to 10 are a prediction model. It's like it's in this condition now, and in 10 years, 6 to 10 years, it will probably be a now need or need something else done to it. So that's the appropriate time to do an intervention, if you will, like a resurfacing. This is an excerpt from Regulation 588-17. So there's only 2 things here I really want to hit on. And it's basically to maintain the current levels of surface as described in paragraph 1, which isn't in here, for each of the 10 years. So basically keep the condition the same. And we go to bullet number IV, using the life cycle activities referred to that can be undertaken for the lowest cost to maintain those levels of service. So you probably need some software to do that, or whoever's preparing the plan should be using some software. That concept that's in the regulation is not news. This is from 1983. I've highlighted that. And there's an earlier document I have in my own records from 1977 from Idaho Department of Transportation. So basically it's saying at that top end of the curve, activities are less expensive. As the condition deteriorates, things get more expensive. So keeping and repeating that message, keep the good roads good and the right treatment at the right time. Here's our deterioration curve. So what does that mean to you? At the top end of the curve, we should be doing crack sealing, gravel road resurfacing, surface treatment, slurry or micro surfacing, maybe on hot mix roads. And then we get down to that dollar value and we're talking about doing a single lift resurfacing. Condition gets worse, we do more intense treatments. So we go through resurface 1 lift, 2 lifts, major rehab, reconstruct. As the road deteriorates, we have a decreasing return on investment on the work that we do or the money that we expend on it, and we have an increasing cost. Some municipalities like to differentiate between operational and capital, and you'll notice what's happened up until now when we're describing Regulation 588-17 is it doesn't differentiate between operational and capital. It simply says do the right treatment at the right time, pick the lowest cost treatments initially, and then backfill the rest of your budget with these other treatments that have a lesser return on investment. So I like to refer to the budget for these activities that we've shown here as a reinvestment amount. If I slide under my graph from 1983, you can see that how this all fits together. And we're really, and this is what is enshrined or ingrained in Regulation 588.17. What do we need to develop a plan? Probably software or some form of database. You need a condition rating methodology. You need accurate condition data, treatments and their effect on the asset and their cost. We need asset classes, meaning which group of assets will perform a certain way. So a gravel road will perform differently than a hot mix road, etc. A steel bridge will perform differently than a concrete bridge. Those kind of things. That's what differentiates an asset class, and then how it will perform is different. And of course, we need budget. So with respect to the project that I did a couple of years ago, I think we started in the fall of 2021 and finished it off by looking at the gravel roads in 22 or spring of 22. Description of the municipality's approach to assessing the condition of the assets in the category based on a recognized and generally accepted good engineering practice. So we did use the inventory manual for municipal roads, so we can check that box. We're in compliance with the regulations. Representative unit costs. So we have valid unit costs, and construction estimates are required to come up with a plan that's valid and representative of what our costing experience is. So the unit costs should be updated on a fairly regular basis to maintain currency of estimates and the modeling, which is another thing that I end up doing. So what I like to do, if you've got multiple tenders, then I usually look at, for some municipalities like yourselves, you just told me what the unit costs were currently. Some send me like a half a dozen tenders, and I figure out what the weighted average of the current unit costs are. So these are kind of the unit costs that we would look at. You can see different activities require a different set of factors there, whether it's asphalt or granular array or adjusting catch basins, which you won't need to do on a rural, things like that. So we try to get all those costs aligned and put them in a standard formula. From the information that we get a segment condition or an asset condition. So road number one from A to B is the segment. And then we can take the collection of the segments and say, well, here's the system condition based on that. So we could do different measures for level of service. So one would be the average of all the ratings. I tend to go with a weighted average because you'll have some sections in your built up areas that have 100-meter sections, and you'll have some sections in your rural areas that might be 3 or 4 kilometers. So averaging those as a straight average doesn't make sense. That's not going to be really representative. So I usually go with that weighted average. And the system adequacy is simply the ratio of fair, good, and excellent assets to the entire system. That one's something that I repeat in every report that I do for every municipality, because that was one of the measures we used when the province provided conditional grant funding prior to 1995. That system target, though, of what your system should look like in terms of adequacy can change by agency profile, whether it's local or regional, like an upper tier municipality, or it's provincial. I like to use this document, the Pavement Asset Design and Management Guide, because this particular graphic has no numbers on it, and I can apply this concept to just about any asset. So you notice under condition, it says pavement condition, and then we have pavement age, just to think of condition and age. So if this was a bridge and our trigger value for rehabilitation was somewhere, a BCI of somewhere in the 70s, then I want to take my target level for the bridge network to be 70 or above. Similarly with roads, you trigger in the inventory manual is 14 out of 20, which is 70 again. So we want to, and that's where the recommendations for the service levels come from, is basically taking this concept and applying it to the methodology that we've used. So once data has been collected in Q8 quality assurance, system analysis can be undertaken on a number of levels. We want to know at the end of the day, what do we have? Where's it located? What condition it's in? What's the improvement recommendation and its cost? What's its current value and what's its replacement cost, and what's the useful remaining life? So here's a couple of excerpts from the 2020 Well, it was a draft report we presented to council in the fall of 21, and in 22, the report was finalized because we looked at the gravel roads during spring breakup. So just a summary of what you have here, basically a 328-kilometer road system. And, a good percentage of it is gravel. And then if we looked in the table at the bottom, we've classified the roads per the inventory manual. So the 100, 200, 300, et cetera, are all related to different traffic volumes for rural roads, and then the local residential and local commercial industrial. So we can look at the data in the database and provide some analysis of what do we have, what condition is it in. So we have a number of parameters here we can look at. So the graph on the table rather on the left, we've looked at what do we have for good to very good and fair and poor. So we're sitting at somewhere around 47.9%. It was good to very good, which is not that bad a rating. And the physical condition here is strictly the condition measure. And we've looked at where the average is versus the entire system. And you can see there is a distribution across the system. One of the measures that we we noted a couple of slides ago is what's the remaining useful life. If you spent $0 on your road system, the entire road system would be in poor condition in approximately 14 years. Gravel roads at the time of, I should have modified this slide a bit. Gravel roads were re-inspected in the spring of 2022. For the purposes of this report tonight, the data is from 2022. So this isn't your current. It's whatever you have done since then. Might change these numbers a little bit, but this isn't accurate for 2024. It'll be reasonable, I think, because you have spent money and done improvements to your road system. From the regulation, there is this measure, and it relates the levels of service measure for roads, and it looks like a density measure. I'm always confused by that first one, where it's a number of lane kilometers of arterial road, local roads, et cetera, divided by the area of the municipality. The real important ones in my mind are the weighted overall road condition, the average paved road, and the average gravel road, which are in similar conditions, like the difference between 62 and 59.6 isn't that much. Recommended improvements and costs from the 22 report. So we had a total improvement needs of about 42 million. But what we did was update your costs, and that 42,715,000 from 2022 is now almost 51 million. So that's a big increase, and it relates completely to the increase in price of the unit cost. The formulae have not changed. All it is substituting more current unit costs. So the replacement cost, the current standard was almost 141 million in 21-22, and it's now 201 million. That's a 42.9% increase. A lot of that is driven by those unit costs like asphalt and gravel and things like that. I do have a slide coming up showing those specific ones. And although earth excavation is a big part of the replacement costs, and earth excavation has probably close to doubled. It has for a lot of the municipalities I deal with. And that's reflective of the regulation for excess soils that came into effect in 2019. So the current estimated value was 104. The current estimated 104 million is now 145 million. So the estimated value of the system has also gone up, but you can still see there's that differential between the replacement cost and the estimated value. It includes storm linear. So if you have storm sewers in some of your areas, it includes that, but it doesn't include stormwater management pond. It doesn't include sanitary sewers, sidewalks, bridges, and culverts. As I alluded to, the costs have gone up. So you can see here that our earth excavation has gone up 67%, double surface treatments 57%. So the net effect is significant to the municipality, 42, almost 42.9%. So, and this is the difficulty that we have, that everybody has, is like, do you raise the bridge or lower the water? Like, do you keep your service level the same? that's going to have a resultant cost increase, or do you lower your service level? And those are particularly difficult council decisions. So other funding considerations, because you're going to probably have some opportunity to apply to the provincial government for grants and subsidies and things like that. And one of the things that the province does is it bases some of its decisions on analysis of the financial information return. So it compared to like municipalities. It will take the financial information returns and look at municipalities with the same population and population density. So they're not comparing an urban center of 10 or 15,000 people with a rural one that's much bigger, road system, et cetera. So they compare those things, and then they compare, are you above or below what everybody else is paying? So the FIR return is mandatory. All municipalities have to do it, but all municipalities do not collect and report on information the same way. Equipment reporting and hourly rates is an example, which range from $0 to what might be an accurate hourly rate. So maybe $110 or $120 for a tandem dump truck. So if all information was collected and recorded with a common set of rules, could be useful, but so at the very highest level, it might be useful, but it's if you want to get into the granularity of some of the measures, it might not be that apples to apples comparison you're hoping for. So the FIR reports are based on the PSAB standards, which are audited by accountants, and they're required by the Municipal Act. They are not voluntary. If FIRs are not submitted, some of the funding may be withheld. And as I said in the previous slide, there might be differences in the FIR based upon the practices. Another example would be accounting policy also affect results. For example, TCA, tangible capital asset policy, with respect to useful lives and amortization methods, will have a huge impact on the tangible capital assets net book value and those amortization expenses. So that one policy alone could significantly change what you're reading or what you're trying to get out of comparisons. So what at the very highest level, though, you can look at what are overall taxes based on the comparisons of like municipalities. What are the taxes per household by tier? How does reserves and debt look? And I think one of the criteria for getting some of the grants is that you do in fact have debt. What's the net book value of the TCAs? Is your municipality below or above the provincial average? And then you have your agency-specific measures, and they could also be interagency, but you have asset sustainability ratio and asset consumption ratio, which is really just measures of how much you're spending versus the amortization values. So the hazard in that, it is the amortization values. So they're comparing an amortization cost might be for a road that you built 30 years ago or a bridge that you built 30 years ago. So that amortization cost is significantly different than the replacement cost. So you might want to consider the previous slides as an indicator of how an application might be reviewed. Are your debts low, taxes low, are you underfunding assets, et cetera? And that might reduce your eligibility. Those are things I'm sure your treasurer might be able to speak to it at some point in time. What I've tried to do is create a funding window for each municipality that I deal with. So as a parallel to the amortization cost, I look at the long-term sustainability funding level, which is what's the replacement cost of that asset? You can do it over 50 or 75 years. And then what's the short-term sustainability funding level? Meaning, what if all I did was do the right thing at the right treatment at the right time and kept the good roads good? How much do I need on that level? And the difference between those two measures, the long-term and the short-term, is what I call the funding level. And then getting back to a few slides ago, I talked about a reinvestment amount. It's spending that amount of money on the right treatments rather than splitting it out by capital and by operations. So it's a paradigm shift that's required for most organizations. So I have applied those new unit costs and the same calculations as I had done a couple of years ago. And you can see there's a difference in the recommendations. So the long-term sustainability is a bit over 4 million. Short-term, 1.8 million, and the funding window is between those recommended levels. So here's what we're looking at. And what I did put in there is also I ran another model, and it's what do I do to sustain the condition? So you can see that if I wanted to keep the condition exactly the same, I would have a widely fluctuating annual amount. So, you know, you would like the years where you're down at 1 million or 600,000, it looks like at the very far end of the model, but not too happy the years that we're up at 2.6 million. So that would be the variance to keep the condition the same, and that isn't really municipal world, but it does go to a bit of an end purpose in comparing what the average of that level would be annually versus that funding level, the short-term funding level that I described in the previous slide. So we want to be above that short-term funding level for sure. That gives you flexibility in what you do. The closer you are to that low level of spending, the less flexibility you have in how you spend the money in terms of keeping the road condition or any asset condition where you want it to be. So if you like the 1.8 million, but then want to do a lot of reconstructions, the overall condition of the system will go down because the priority should be the resurfacing, hot mix, surface treatment, crack sealing, those kind of things, and gravel road resurfacing. So we have to keep those things in mind when we develop the program. So the short-term funding level is designed to sustain the system over time. Funding is at a fixed annual amount. And again, I've superimposed the maintain. So I ran a model to maintain the condition, and you can see the difference in the condition versus the short-term sustainability condition with a static annual amount. So to test it, we would say that the average of the maintain model is $1.58 million a year. Sorry, I missed the dollar sign there. Whereas we're saying the short-term sustainability is 1.8 million. And the difference is that some years at that average 1.58, you're spending 2.6 million to maintain the condition of the system. So that, as I've alluded to, we want to kind of inject a paradigm shift into the way we think about things. And as we move towards pure asset management, treatment selection will be by condition. And that's what the regulation says, and shouldn't be limited to an arbitrary value. So we don't, what I mean by that is we don't want to have that fixed amount in capital and a fixed amount in operations. So the gross funding level should be sufficient to sustain or improve the asset with all of those elements included. Arbitrary limitations through categorization as capital or operating will result in reduced performance at a given funding level. So opportunities to undertake the right treatment at the right condition will be missed. So where this would be very noticeable is in a municipality that's experiencing significant growth. So if you have a lot of subdivisions that were built at the same time, you will have to resurface those roads at approximately the same time. If you limit the amount you're going to spend on resurfacing in any given year, then you will miss the opportunity to do those roads at the right time. This was a model I created for a small municipality. Budget was about a little over $2 million a year. But what I tried to do was plot up, here's the different programs and the different activities that we're going to do. And you can see they vary every year. And the idea is that, yes, we're doing some gravel road resurfacing, we're doing some crack sealing, etc. And it's all within that reinvestment amount. And that's how we would manage the assets from a pure asset management perspective. So different models have different calculations. The return on investment model, the area under the curve is like pure calculus, so we want to avoid that. Return on investment is pretty much aligned with the requirements of the Regulation 588-17. So when I run that model in the software I use, it's picking essentially the activities that will give me the best bang for the buck, hold the condition or increase the condition at the lowest cost. As an example, this is not from your system, but what we're trying to illustrate is the green line is the best return on investment. It's the right treatment at the right time. The orange line is by what we call priority rating. So it's really pushing the selection to a higher volume road with or in poorer condition. So you can see at the same dollar value, you get significantly different performances over time by going worst first in effect rather than the best return on investment. You had some specific issues. I understand that you're starting to address those narrow roads by widening them out a bit, which is great. Drainage in some of the urban and semi-urban areas didn't maybe appear to have a positive outlet. And the system condition reviewed in the interim report this bullet I should have probably taken out. So some of the information I provided you was the condition after we did the 2022 spring review. And I think it ended up being higher than we'd anticipated. System adequacy, there's your target maybe for next year when you have to have level of service measures in your asset management plan. Your target was 60% for system adequacy. It measures 74.5, but the caveat with that is that any road less than 50 cars a day or vehicles a day is deemed to be adequate. So if I subtracted those out, you're still at 68.6, so you're within that window that MTO would have liked 3 decades ago. Your average pavement condition index, PCI, is 60.9, good to very good, 47.9. Again, those are level of services, and those are some things you might want to think about for your 2025 report. These are the recommendations from the 22 report. I don't think we need to maybe go through those. You all have a copy, but basically the purpose of this presentation was to provide a high-level asset management review, align it with what the provincial requirements are, and illustrate what the effect of your increased costs were on your budget and the recommendations that came out of that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dave. So I'm worried that my council won't show up at this budget deliberation we're going to have in December. I will take questions, I'm sure. So we do have our treasurer, we do have our road super, our director or superintendent, and Dave. So how do we want to format? Do we just start off with questions? So I'll start with Deputy Mayor Densham.
Thank you, Dave, for your presentation. Actually, it's more in terms of what's included in this analysis. At one point, I saw in one of the slides that it excluded bridges and culverts, and I didn't know whether or not that exclusion played throughout the rest of the presentation, or was it just for those particular slides?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Any number that we've displayed there is strictly for the road system, including like in the urban area, curb and gutter, and the storm sewer. Does not include stormwater management ponds, and does not include bridges and culverts as identified under Regulation 104-97, which would be greater than 3 meter span. So it does not include those, and that's consistent throughout all the variables or the values that we've shown there.
Okay, that's great. But I guess in terms of analysis and setting aside money from a budgetary perspective, we'll have to look at those at some point and add that into the mix.
Well, definitely. One of the things I try to suggest to municipalities is look at all assets the way you would look at what's required for your water and wastewater assets, meaning that you have to look at your water rate includes the cost for replacement, treatment, et cetera, maintenance on your water system, and it goes into a reserve, and you pay for everything for the water system out of that. And that kind of makes sense to do that for other asset groups. So you could look at your bridges instead of having a big dollar value 1 year, like possibly millions, because bridges are expensive. If you put an annualized amount in a reserve that was just for the bridges that represented the life cycle cost, then that money is there, and there's not such a crisis in that on that annual basis or when that work is actually required.
Yeah, 100%. I think that this is, from a finance perspective, it's a smoothing exercise. If I was to put it crudely, we basically want to try to avoid sticker shock as much as possible from year to year. People expect a certain degree of tax increases, but not major ones from year to year. So it's kind of a smoothing exercise, and And to your point, everything needs to be included if we want to do that. Now, on top of that, of course, is value you're bringing is not just smoothing from a financial perspective, but also a quality and level of service perspective. So thank you.
Thank you. So if I can add to that, so in regards to our bridges, but more so when you're dealing with our roads, I find that I've been looking at wanting our roads department to invest some of our time and money in looking at our hamlets. So that's where we have pavement more so. So we have more of our gravel roads going down our concession road. We've got certain surface treated, but then when you get to towns where we actually have paved roads that do need, but the issue is a lot of times is the drainage in some of the areas have to be tended to. So you have to invest this money into making sure that it drains properly before you actually put money into the actual road. And that's where it makes it difficult for seeing, yes, we got to fix the roads, but at the same time, there's so many factors that comes into play, and that being one of them in our smaller towns and our roads that are being paved. Can you maybe add to that? Is that I'm sure it's all over the map, all over the province, but that is a big factor. Again, that is not discussed here with regards to our roads, correct?
One of the measures in the data that was provided was there is a data field that indicates the drainage score. So, and there was some commentary in the report about drainage in some of the built up areas being there are some rural roads where the ditches aren't, could use improvement as well. But as recently as last week, I think I said in a presentation that the three most important things in road design or road construction are drainage, drainage, and drainage. So coming up with some type of overall plan for your built up areas as to how's the water collected and directed to a legal adequate outlet makes some kind of sense. And then keeping the granular bases dry by having appropriate ditches or subdrains or whatever, depending on the roadside environment, will ensure that you're getting the maximum life out of the roads that you construct. So hopefully I answered your question there, but if I didn't.
No, that's appreciated, Dave. So I've got other questions with me. I'll turn around. So one of the councillors have any question, Councillor Bocelli?
More just kind of a thank you, first of all, for your presentation. A lot of information here to digest. What I kind of see as an overarching thing is there's almost an aspect of what kind of philosophy are we going to adopt moving forward. We've been talking about that going back to just after the last election of where do we see ourselves as a municipality and where do we see ourselves in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And I feel like a lot of this kind of would play off of well with things we've looked at in our strat plan and how this would play out. I kind of relate things back into terms that I can understand. You're obviously on the engineering side, road side. I look at this kind of like almost like a sports franchise and saying us as general managers, what are we looking at? What kind of philosophy? When you talk about the asset management system that we want, what do we want to adopt as our philosophy moving forward? Are we looking at a big bang, big buck spend on free agents, or are we more of those build and develop and maintain? So it's I think there's a lot of thinking that's going to need to go into this, not just looking at the numbers, the dollars and cents, but philosophically where we see ourselves moving forward in the years to come.
If I could just jump in on that. Yeah, philosophically, that is part of what you have to do for next year. Next year, you have to think about what your level of service will be. So a lot of times we relate the level of service to the condition. So there's kind of that fine line of, we could maybe lower the condition expectations, but if we lower the condition expectations, there's going to be an increase in the number of complaint phone calls. So those are certainly big time considerations, and this is like a build and develop thing, and nothing in asset management or the rate that assets deteriorate is quick. Like this takes time, and a recovery or building it better takes time. So I think you said some important things there about looking at this as a longer term plan for sure.
So before I move around, I'll ask one and then jump to the other side. So in regards, I was kind of hoping maybe to have council understand better. So what we do have, so not that we have many, we do have one that was just done, a nice paved road that was just done this summer. Majority of our roads we deal with are gravel, and then we have 1 or 2 lift surface treated roads. To understand what the cost is to maintain our gravel roads, which is and seeing is there a benefit to, so as council sits there, try to determine what we're going to put forward in budget and what the level of service that we want would be a good thing to understand better. You know what, we lay down aggregates or for our gravel roads that will last us 3 years versus possibly a 1 or 2 lift surface treated, how long that will take us, and to understand where is their best bang for our buck.
Again, through the mayor, that is a whole other presentation. And the 100,000 foot level at that is in the early 2000s, Haldeman Norfolk was restructured, and I was the engineering and infrastructure manager for Haldeman Norfolk, and it was about a 1,450 kilometer road system. About 450 of kilometers of that were gravel. As of last Tuesday, there is no gravel roads left. So over the last 22 years, they have resurfaced. Those roads are built them up to a point where they could be surfaced, because you need drainage and you need structure to resurface them. But the analysis that I undertook when we first got restructured was that just off the budgets from the existing municipalities, our gravel roads were costing about 50% more per kilometer to maintain over time than the hardtop surfaces. So that begat a more detailed analysis and presentation to council that led to the decision to gradually convert the gravel roads over time. Now, of your report from 2021/2, I believe it would be Appendix D might speak to the gravel road conversions. Blake, if you have it, or if you want me to split that out and send it separately, send me an email tomorrow and I'll do that, and you can share that with council. But the idea is that it is more expensive to properly maintain gravel roads, because what ends up happening is on a gravel road, the structure and the wearing surface are one and the same. So when you have a hardtop road, you can see when the hardtop's failing. When you have a gravel road, a lot of times you've lost all your gravel, or a lot of your gravel, before you discover that you're actually down to the dirt and there's not much gravel left. So that's kind of important. And the 3 inches, and it depends, like that was the subsidy level, previous to 1995, was a theoretical 3 inches every 3 years, because the more often you grade a road, the more often you lose a bit of gravel. So the finer bits turn into dust. They don't hold the larger particles in there, so they kind of ravel off and go to the side. So more traffic, more blading, more aggregate loss, and that's where it comes from. There's a number of studies from the States, from New Zealand, from Australia, from a number of other different countries that say similar things in terms of the aggregate loss. Why it's important to note that 75 millimeters is because if you put down too thin a lift of gravel, and all you see is large stones on top after you put the gravel down, well, they're just going to ravel off and go into the ditch, and now you've wasted what money you did put down on the road. So as I started, this is already a long-winded answer. Sorry for that. It's a longer discussion, but certainly has merit in reviewing.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. I find the more dollars you have, the easier it is to attain, and then you actually save in the long run over the efficiency. And what makes it hard is for smaller municipalities to, no different than managing a household that brings in a household income of 300, obviously can manage better than a household that brings in 100. So that's the decision of council to see where, like, I understand, I fully understand the efficiency and the cost savings if you do the hard, but you got to get to the hard surfaces and pay that money before getting what I call the savings. So I guess that's for an in-house discussion maybe to be had, but I'll go over to Councillor McDonald.
Well, I agree with your comments about looking for the staff and the budget coming to present like strategic options for us. I think I also like the sports analogy, but I think I'm leaning more towards how to do the optimization, the preservation, and the strategic investments that can, you know, over time save money, but there is a limited amount of money to spend. I was interested in, there's recommendations at the end of the presentation from 2022. I'm not sure if any of those recommendations have been acted on. I know some of them have big price tags, but others seem to be recommendations on the way we conduct our program, the way we document things, like understanding the evaluation systems being used for assets, et cetera. So I hope some of those things are being addressed, and maybe staff can give us an update when you present your work plan or whatever on those recommendations. But one that was interesting is storm sewers becoming a rate supported. How was it worded?
Rate supported asset.
Yeah, rate supported utility. I think that's
Utility.
interesting, though I know there's probably pushback in rural areas and how that gets rolled out. But if the drainage issues are mostly rural or mostly urban, that would be interesting to know, because I think there'd be more appetite for that type of a rate in an urban environment and much less appetite in a rural environment. So, and I also thought it was very interesting to see the increase in the cost of excavation and how much we're being hit by the unit price adjustments, 40 to 50%. I think we knew that, but it was over such a short time span. And I don't think I realized how much this had really changed in such a short time. So the last thing I was going to say is just, it would be nice when we make the decisions on what things to invest in, to understand better the complaints that people have, because I don't know what people are complaining about. So you may want to give us an overview as well of what you're hearing out there, because I know it's your phone that rings more than mine, and I'm grateful for that. But just a summary of what you hear would be helpful to help make decisions on investing money. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, Deputy Mayor Densham?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Really, my mind is to the point you made earlier. It's going towards budget and what I'd like to be able to see to be able to make a decision. You know, I guess everybody expects maintenance as kind of a bare minimum baseline. And so given the price increases, I don't even know how whether or not, or how much we may have to raise taxes just to maintain the level that we've already been maintaining. The next thing that we would layer onto that would be kind of option 2 would be cost efficiency. You know, if we injected a little bit more money now, we could actually get into a cycle that's going to be significantly more cost efficient. And then at that point, we can start talking about improvements. If we've got extra money or whatever, and again, I know from a financial standpoint, we've got some good income. I'm anticipating that we may be hearing some good news as well in terms of, it's not called the gas tax anymore, but coming up, some announcements there. So if we were able to justify some additional money, where would we want to focus at in terms of service level improvements? So I guess that's kind of where my mind is first and foremost, we need to be able to maintain the level of service if we don't want to get more complaints than what we're getting. And I'd want to understand from an affordability perspective, what are we going to be looking at in terms of cost increase, effect on taxation. And then I guess the last piece on that, and this may change, may be good for the short term, but may change after the coming elections. Maybe we have a window of opportunity here to see whether or not there may be some funding coming up, coming available. I don't know how long lasting that is, but so that's kind of my viewpoint in terms of what I'd be looking for during budget discussions. I think Blake wants to.
Yeah, so what I'll do, Dave, is our road superintendent will ask a question, but I also will probably pick his, and then I'll go after to our treasurer. They're going to be the force of the fittest they're coming into, and one's got a walking boot and the other one had a finger in the sling, so I don't know who. So I would, no, I'd like to maybe just get their comment as we are starting budget deliberation in early December, and then maybe you can have final words on overall what took place here tonight. So go ahead, Blake.
Through the mayor, Dave, a few local municipalities around here has explained to me that they actually turned some gravel roads back, sorry, some surface roads back in the gravel. And I have heard that up in Western Ontario, there's a few municipalities that had to do the same thing. Have you come across with all your contacts across Western Ontario with your studies that at some point, yes, it's nice to, and I understand we chatted about your philosophy about it's cheaper in the long run, but have you heard any of that kind of stuff going on lately, or?
Yes, actually, there is, and there is one road that MTO is considering up north, changing back to gravel. My comment on that would be, well, if the road is that bad, that's a reflection of not doing the right maintenance for a long time. So it got in that condition because it was underfunded. And I'd be very, very cautious about, because there are other studies out there about, that backward or reversing it back to gravel kind of concept. And I'd be very cautious about that. I'd be very cautious about how I did the financial analysis, because a number of municipalities that I deal with think they can do things at less cost than a contractor or whatever. And the struggle is that they're only charging maybe $30 or $40 or $50 an hour for a dump truck. So of course it looks good that way if you're using those numbers, but those aren't real numbers. So you have to, when you have an equipment rate, the equipment rate has to have all of the costs for that piece of equipment, including capital depreciation built into it, and the number of hours you use it per year and how many years you're going to use it before you turn it over. So when you do the financial analysis and you've got the right equipment rates and the total manpower rate that includes overhead benefits, administration, and those kind of things, when you start to build the analysis with those kind of numbers, it may be a short-term decision to convert hardtop to gravel, but understand that if there's any kind of traffic on it, you're going to spend a lot more on maintenance on an ongoing basis on that same gravel road. And if that hardtop road is broken, that means there's probably some kind of structural problem, which means it's going to be exacerbated through it turning to gravel.
I know, Dave, you're going to say that. The reason I asked that question is the basic principle of what we have, and we haven't done a lot of upgrading lately to surface treatment. In the past, and even now, the council has given me finances to actually try to maintain some of the structural roads as a resurfacing program. But it's the principle of the cost to make that road. The reason I asked is the cost to make that road structurally strong enough to actually do it per kilometer than just what we've been doing lately is just resurfacing roads and overlaying roads. So that's kind of a two-part question. One, the council sees that it costs a lot more to build the road right. Is that not right, Dave?
What I do, I'm just writing a note to myself. I will send you a presentation I did last week at the Asset Management for Low Volume Roads conference or workshop that Good Roads held. And for low volume roads, I usually recommend a treatment of base and surface tolerable, which is out of the inventory manual. So you're not reconstructing it in terms of, you're not putting down, a total of 400 or 500 millimeters of gravel. It's 300 millimeters of gravel. And I usually recommend that where you've got satisfactory width. And the dollar value for it it includes improvements to ditches, the 300 millimeters of gravel extra, and then putting a top on it, which is, significantly less cost than a total reconstruction. But for a low volume road, that should work for a reasonable length of time. Part of what goes hand in hand with that is, and you'll see it in this presentation, which it was a public presentation, so you can share that with council. That's not a problem. Is half loads. We are really having an issue with climate change because instead of half loads traditionally, the Highway Traffic Act even specified a date decades ago. You know, half loads started on March 1st. Well, now that's been removed from the Highway Traffic Act. You as an agency can impose half loads when you see fit. And because we have multiple freeze thaws through the winter. So I think it's important to do the two things is, okay, recognize we can fix it to some extent, not a total reconstruction or a perfect reconstruction, but then implement the half loads when the conditions warrant it rather than the date. So those two things should be really beneficial to keeping the system in better shape.
Thank you, Dave. So maybe the last word before we want to have our treasurer, as far as if there's anything to add when it comes to the financial side of things.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I was looking at our asset management plan that we currently have, and they're suggesting annual for roads at 2.1 million. So that's in between the long-term and short-term that Dave has in his presentation. So it seems to be in line. That plan also indicates at least a 1.6% increase to put just simply toward our infrastructure. And that's not just roads. So trying to meet that sustainability of 4 million when our current budget is roughly 1.3 to 1.6, it's 4 times the amount that we currently spend. So hoping there's some large grants coming our way for infrastructure, but we do what we can within our means.
So the last question will go to you, Dave. If we try to go within our means, what's your recommendation? So you're now in our chairs, and if you were to, so between what we have as far as gravel, surface treated, but I know we have unlimited funds because we can just raise taxes, but is there an avenue that you would just give us kind of your thoughts on where the direction you would take?
Certainly the budget adjustment makes all kinds of sense. Good to see that I get accused of saying the dollar value is too much, but somebody else came up with a bit more. So I think that budget increase, the difficulty is, and so maybe just to clarify, I referenced Haldimand County a few minutes ago. It's a 1,450 kilometer road system, but there's only 45,000 people there. So it's just as kind of rural as your environment. So it's a long-term development decision that has to be made. So what I would look at is the roads that we think you have, and when I was there, I did have quite a few discussions with you, and I forget one of your lead hands' names there, about which roads didn't perform well in the spring. And you would have a history of that. And so you know where you've got your problem children, so to speak. So are the other ones, and we could look at the data in the database and say, hey, the drainage isn't too bad on this road. The width is okay. Maybe we could add a bit of gravel and convert it and start to look at the life cycle costs. Because that's really where that decision is looking at the life cycle costs. So those would be some of the things I'd be considering, is optimizing those things. One of the things that you do have out there in your particular location too, is that all of your granular material is 100% crushed. So the performance of 100% crushed material is quite different from like a granular B. Type 1 for the OPS specs does not have any crushed material. Your granular B there is a granular B type 2. It's 100% crushed. So it has a different performance and a different structure. So take advantage of that in trying to look at some of those conversions. To integrate, and again, it'll be in the slideshow that I send you by an email there, to integrate your operations and your capital. So what I did as far back as 30 odd years ago in Delhi Township was, when we wanted to convert a road, year one was the operations targeted that for drainage. We made sure the drainage was good. Year two, we added gravel, and if it performed okay over the winter, year three, I'm putting a top on it, like a double surface treatment. So integrating your capital with operations for those low volume roads might be beneficial too, because you already have funding probably in your budget for ditching. Well, let's focus the ditching in this area this year, or this road segment, et cetera. That kind of idea.
Perfect. Well, I thank you very much. If there is further questions, we could go through Blake, our road superintendent. If there's anything maybe to reach out to you, but we will definitely have some discussions come December, and it at least gives us a better understanding as to where we should be at and where we hope to be at. But I appreciate your time, Dave. And again, you have yourself a good night, and we'll go and take some of your recommendations and move forward.
Hey, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Right then.
So that was just delegation, so I guess I can move on to. Okay, so let's move on to item 7.1, the adoption of minutes of our previous meetings.
Be it resolved that the following minutes be approved as presented. Special meeting October 2nd, regular meeting October 8th, moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Deputy Mayor Denton.
Any questions on the, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Denton?
Yes, and I mentioned this to Leanne prior to the meeting. Just on the regular minutes, at the end when I was congratulating Avonmore Park, maybe I didn't say Avonmore, it just is generic about the park, but given the fact that this is being recorded, I'd like to specify Avonmore Park, if you could, please.
Noted. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Moving on to the adoption of minutes. Oh, sorry, I have both a mover and seconder. All in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to the adoption of minutes of which we do not have for local boards. So item 9.1, receiving of monthly staff report and recommendations.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont hereby supports and recommends an extension of the draft plan approval for the LaFlèche Industrial Subdivision, SDG file 01-NS-S-2007 to the Director of Planning Services of the United Counties of SD&G, moved by Deputy Mayor Denton, seconded by Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor McDonald.
It does say in the report that the development is proceeding, but is it actually?
So I can probably speak. So they come up to their extension deadline, which they just get. So to be honest with you, I don't know. I'm maybe could ask. So in regards to collaborating with our EDO now, is the group from the LaFlèche subdivision incorporating, because I know municipalities that do have their own industrial park. In our case, it's an independent individual that has land, but it would benefit the municipality tremendously if he was to have. So I'm not sure if maybe reaching out to that group, if there's anything that could be, whether it's our own EDO or through counties, and just trying to stir up. It's prime location when you look at the 138 to 417 that could benefit possibly moving forward. So that.
Through the chair, the EDO has met with GFL, of course, but he has not met with the LaFlèche stakeholders. So we can certainly try and facilitate that.
Yep. And I would highly recommend just to go and have a meeting with, so Mr. LaFlèche himself is very approachable, and I think that would be something beneficial for both sides.
Because I don't have an issue with extending it. I just know it's been since 2008, and it's just something I'd like to see actually come to fruition. And sometimes people it just keeps sitting there. So if there's anything we can do to support, I think that would be great. Thanks.
The one thing in regards, and we're coming up with the next one, is often when you get more of the residential extensions where affects our allocation that's been granted and that's so on. So with La Flèche, is there anything tied that we have? Like, I mean, they're kind of on their own in our municipality as far as industrial subdivision. There's nothing tied up as far as of our infrastructure that they, am I correct on saying that? Correct.
Do they have an employment land designation? And are we limited in that type of designation, perhaps?
Through the chair, I'll have to look into that. I can't respond
I
to
don't
that.
think it's a serious issue. It's just something that I think the province has made it easier for us to add employment land, and I think we wouldn't have an issue to add it, but it does, I think, hold that sort of registered employment development.
Thank you. So with that said, the motion's on the table, so all in favor of the extension, motion is carried. Moving on to item 9.2, the Gen Sub Development Inc. subdivision draft plan approval extension.
That the council of the township of North Stormont hereby supports and recommends an extension of the draft plan approval for the Gen Sub Development Inc. subdivision, SDG file 01-NS-S-2021 to the Director of Planning Services of the United Counties of SDNG. Moved by Councillor Bogelli, second by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Again, it's a similar aspect. They did off of Villeneuve Street. South side is all fully constructed. Now they're moving on, so there's not many lots left on the inside for that phase 2. So with the motion being read, all in favor of the motion, motion is carried. Moving on to blue box collection from the non-eligible sources.
That the council of the township of North Stormont accepts this report and agrees to discontinue the curbside collection of blue box materials from ineligible sources as of January 1st, 2025. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Bogelli.
Thank you. I'll take questions from or Deputy Mayor Densham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, this transition was, it has to happen at some point, and I realize that, and it's ultimately a part of a big picture that's happening. I guess January 1st for non-eligible sources, particularly the ones that we've already been picking up for, that's where I'm a little concerned whether or not they're going to have enough notice to be able to make provisions for themselves, the not-for-profits, et cetera, et cetera. I'm thinking one particular residence that I have an interest in, whereby if we have to figure that out, and there's going to be additional costs that maybe needs to be factored into the cost of services, et cetera, et cetera. It just seems really quick. So maybe we can speak to that a little bit. I don't know how many people, how many non-eligible sources we have been collecting for already. Maybe we can talk a little bit to that. And then might there be an appetite for council to see whether or not, and I think this was one of the options, was that we could get a quote from the people who will be picking up the blue boxes, see if we can fund that for a period of time until so we can give adequate notice so they can find and make adjustments to be able to support the move over to taking on the ownership of that responsibility themselves and cost.
Craig, do you want to take, I know we have Blake with the regional working group, but between the one of you, did you?
Through the chair, I'll let Blake elaborate, but ultimately, even with the option that the deputy mayor has indicated, it is only for 1 calendar year. So we need to find a long-term solution for these ineligible locations such as schools and institutions and not-for-profits. Blake, did you want to interject because the working group has been looking at this?
Yes, I mean, we were trying to get this going a little bit faster to council. There's still a lot of unknowns in this transition to blue box. I know the working group went up to Toronto to directly for not conference, but actually a meeting to try to sort out to get direct information. Our game plan was there is some contracts in the area. We don't want to direct give a name out just to one contractor. Our game plan was actually to directly contact, if this goes through, to directly contact and discuss with every business and owner. We are on the list that we can pay the company to collect, like you say, if they want to have more time. I've been doing a lot of investigating into the possibility of how we can provide a service to them, because we've been doing it since 2004. But the feasibility of it to have a truck, a man, pay for the actual processing, it'd be outrageous per ton, like what we'd be paying to collect that little volume. And as it is, there's a few commercial places now that has a local contractor that provides this service to them. And if we have to, if council wants, we could, I want to directly contact them basically all over the next week and saying what the game plan would be. And I was the last one who was hesitated to not throw it out in the public to try to find a way to provide the service that we've been providing for 20 years now. So if there's any other questions, if you want, we can discuss. Or
Well, how many people would fall on that list of, and I mean specifically people who we have been servicing to date?
basically, we've been servicing everyone
Right.
to date. So number 4 on the second page. So it's commercial, not-for-profit, municipal buildings, daycare, churches, which we don't really get anything from churches.
I'm anticipating that number to be small, is it?
Yeah, it is
In
very
double
small.
digits?
It wasn't feasible for us to do a program just to keep our system going.
I agree with that. And I'm sorry, just my comment is, I'm perfectly fine at some point saying to them, they need to take this over.
Yeah.
From that perspective. It's the fact that we're going to impose it as quickly as January 1st, it's just not giving them a chance to transition. I'm hoping that through this whole piece, we'll be in a position to decommission trucks or at least repurpose the trucks, and we'll be able to reduce costs. So can we take some of that cost reduction to create a transition period that's adequate, inform them that they have maybe till January 1st, 2026 to find accommodations. We're happy to recommend different services, et cetera, and just sort of give a transition period that is funded out of our cost savings. Does that sound like a doable scenario?
Yes. Talk with the local contractor who has the SDG territory for collection. He couldn't even tell me the price what they're going to charge for the extra. So that's why everything's been so delayed. And you think it'd be a lot more progress in the system that everybody would know, and everybody could get a feasible number to say, well, okay, what's it going to cost for, because we already input, we can do that system, what you're asking for, because we inputted that into their information for the contract to collect for us. But as of now, he's can't give me a number of what it's going to cost us.
Yeah, so
So-
I guess my comment is, and this is more for council if they want to voice in, I'm open to the idea of reinvesting some of that cost to provide a 6-month to 1-year transition period, at which point these businesses, just due to the nature of the program, would have to take ownership of that themselves, so we can help support the transition.
And
Thank you.
through the chair, I think the Public Works Superintendent and the Treasurer do need to sit down and look at the numbers to make sure that we're actually, we have that funding available. I'd like to see the actual hard numbers for the fuel savings and staff savings and maintenance savings, and then what it will cost for this private company to do that. So I think council needs to have a really good understanding of what those will be.
Well, I have my own comments, but I'll go first to Councillor Bajelli.
I personally find it completely irresponsible on the province at this point, and everybody, that we are now 2 months away from this taking effect, and we're still just digging for details and final costs and things like that. I'd be interested in, and I'm supportive of the idea of the deputy mayor. I'd be interested to know if what's being offered, if it's an all in one kind of thing, as in you have to take it for a year, or is there an option to say that we're going to do that for 6 months? So until June or July 1st. I think if we just offered across the board 1 year, that may not be the best approach, because people are just going to wait till the last minute. And the onus will be on us to inform people of what's happening, and we can be doing that in the short term.
through the chair, it's quite clear that the collection, if we were to transition it to a private carrier, would only be for a maximum of 1 calendar year.
But could
We-
it be a shortened period?
I believe that's at the discretion of the township.
And that's my interest in saying, okay, they've laid it that we will not go beyond 1 year. But the onus should be on us to get the word out, to educate people that won't be getting that collection in the short term, so that we wouldn't have to incur these costs for an entire year, as opposed to maybe we just look at a 6-month.
Well, the word you said to educate, well, the issue, we are having a hard time educating ourselves and now
Exactly.
trying to relate some information to so right now, I'm sure there's businesses out there that will tend to their own, but what is the options? So right now, I don't know what to tell them as far as their options that they have. Do they have options, or is it a one fixed thing? No, you go with this, or if you're not happy, and then second question is there an opportunity where some of them are just going to say, you know what, Blue Box and Glad Bag, and is it going to end up in our landfill because of they're going to pick up my garbage if they're not going to pick up my recycling? So that's aspect that we have to. And last is I know what it's like. We've done garbage in-house for many years. There's the phone calls that come in where people are very hard-nosed when their garbage should be picked up and they're not picked up, or so on. So who's going to be are they still going to be calling here come January 1st if their Blue Box was not picked up? Has that been discussed through that working group?
Yes. We all agreed that in the transition, they're supposed to get all the P&E and all the information from the contractor. But we also agreed that we're going to get the phone calls. No matter how much you tell them, and if they're not pleased, it's going to be, time will tell how much happens and how good they're supplying the service. We're not getting a lot of feedback from other municipalities who transitioned already. But to go on your other question, and maybe with Craig and Kimberly, right now we won't be paying like what we budget in recycling. We won't paying that completely. So I think our recycling is running at about over 2 something, and then we're getting refund, depends on the process. This year's low. So, I mean, without increasing it, it's all up to you, to council and finance, but if we don't change the numbers, there's money there to actually do it. What it is we can pay the contractor when we know what the cost is. It's also pretty well publicly known that some of the small places got recycling, you're going to take it someplace else and put it someplace else, and it's going to get collected as a residence. So, but you can't publicize that well, it's being publicized now, but I mean, it's well known that
It'll happen.
it happened.
Yeah.
So, but with the bigger places, the nonprofit or the big commercial places, I think some direct communication with them. If council wants, we can look into what it's going to cost us to give them a period of time, or do we actually do it case by case? Do you, and have it that, okay, we'll give you a transition period, but we're not paying, we're going to charge back that cost that we have to pay. I mean, it's gone through the other 5 municipalities. It's not just simple yes or no question. We can do whatever you want. But at some point we have to either we pay the whole shot for everybody who's not getting picked up for so long, or do we inquire for them to, but we do have places that get picked up and paying now in the town.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I understand that. So we're North Stormont. So the agricultural aspect of our township is you have farms that have the household. So how is that going to be divided up from, you have a house that pays taxes that would get the recycle picked up, but behind the house you have a barn. So it's more on the material that would be.
Consensus is that you have, unless you abuse the system, you have a residence there, or say two in a big farm, that they're gonna collect it. But we won't know, depends what farmer puts out, if the contractor is gonna come back and say, well, this is over the top, this is not residential product, whatever, so we can't, that's what we don't know. We're assuming the way they wrote the legislation that the residents going to get picked up, if they're on a farm or on this or on that, they're going to be picked up.
Kim wanted to say something.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the timing is terrible on this for January 1st because the budget hasn't gone forward. My concern, I just wanted you to be aware, is that whatever savings we might have here, if we're looking at increasing infrastructure funding by 1.6 to begin with, you've got 2% for cost of living, you've got insurance going up 15%, benefits 19.8%. There's a lot of unknowns. Whatever little savings, whatever savings we may have here may help offset some of this. But like I said, the timing is terrible because if it was June, we'd know because the budget would be passed, right? So I just want council to be cautious in their decision-making at this point.
So the motion that's on the table is basically that we're agreeing to discontinue. So this is not telling us what we're going to do from there. It's just correct. So do you want to add to that?
No, I don't want to add. I guess I would, at this point, a clear plan. I don't think I support the motion the way it sits. I think what we need to hear back is some of that final legwork to say, here's what here's what the options are, here's what the impact will be. And then if you want us to choose an option, January 1st, 6 months later, 1 year later, here's the cost. I need that information to do it. But at this point, it's so abrupt and there's so many unknowns. I just don't feel comfortable supporting this.
And through the chair, Blake, can you confirm that our other 5 partner municipalities have already passed this motion and accepted it? Not that we should do that. I'm just asking for clarification. Is that accurate? I believe
Yes, and exactly, this is pretty well the same motion that went to a lot of municipalities. Right?
Maybe they got a good plan.
Well, no, it was just the decision was to let the commercial places look after themselves, and the other places not being picked up by residents look after themselves. That's what was brought up. It did make a little stir in a few municipalities, but I'm not privileged to say what happened.
And through the chair, if I could suggest, if council has the appetite, perhaps defer it. Don't defeat the motion, but just defer it and allow Public Works to come back with some more definitive numbers, also from finance, and also potentially have some discussions with some of these affected locations.
Go ahead. Yes.
Just to add that I think it has to be dealt with as soon as possible because we're not notifying, like this is delaying notifying these people. So we're making the timeline tighter for them. So let's make sure we deal with it at the next meeting if we can.
We need to incorporate, if I can provide my input, I think we need to include these affected individuals or these businesses or these institutions in finding a solution to this. I don't think we should in isolation.
If I can just, the final word, I think what happens by delaying it, we're giving them time to, I understand that, but we have to, this here has to give them direction. January 1st, the Blue Box program is starting. To defer it, I don't know, look, we can still pass the motion, we understand we're going there, and then get a direction on how we're going to deal with. The first step would be to notify, find out how many, so there's a lot of unknowns, find out how many people is on the actual ineligible list, and from there would give us, come December, something that we'll have good numbers on, and come December we'll have a better idea what we're up against when the budget comes.
And I don't mind if we're holding up the transit, I don't mind passing it with the caveat that said to include a transition plan for the affected parties to be determined. And again, if we're talking like a small handful of people, I don't think the cost is gonna be exorbitant. If it is gonna be a huge cost to be able to say, you know what, as you're driving by, can you pick up these guys? We've been doing it. We have to figure out a transition plan. If it is that big of a cost, then I do believe, in fact, they need that notice to be able to come up with a transition plan.
But last is every other municipality is in the same boat. And again, to say, oh, North Stormont, you know what, we're gonna take care of you. I fully understand, I support it, but we have to look at our finance department saying it's coming to a point where we are gonna be stuck with increasing taxes to more than what it's a decision that we have to face, and they're all facing it. So it's not something standalone to Stormont that we're saying, oh, we're being, so I'm thinking that as far as passing the motion, it's moving forward. We will get the numbers and possibly see where we can help come budget time. So,
I can't support a motion that I don't know the numbers on. So if we're gonna defeat it, but we're defeating it without having, I don't have enough information to make an informed decision, frankly. Because we're saying that we have an option, but we don't know the cost of that option. And if it's only 6 months, we have zero cost. And I understand everybody's under the same timeline right now, but if we pass the motion and we are discontinuing service, and then a number comes back in 2 weeks, and the number is something that we could have easily incorporated into our budget because it is so minuscule, but at this point, we don't know. It's like we have.
Craig, can you correct me? Can we not change, like, can we accept this, that it's gonna happen come January 1st? And then if we feel that, okay, this is now where we're getting through numbers, okay, is it something that come budget that we can look at?
I suppose we could, but again, my recommendation is to defer this until we get some harder numbers. There's nothing to preclude Public Works from.
I just don't know if we're gonna get those numbers. We're talking, this is in 2 months. Blake, is it safe to say, are we gonna get all the numbers and the answers that we're looking for?
Oh, well, it was less, I talked to a lady today about some of this, but not directly on this. It was about 3 weeks ago, I asked what would be the charge. And Herb, who has the contract he's a subcontractor for SDG. He said it could be $8-9 a pickup.
And through the chair, if we have those numbers, Blake and Howard should be able to pull those locations together. So we have a hard number to do the math. And the treasurer should be able to determine what it will cost for the private contractor and what we're saving from our own fleet.
Okay. So if we defer and possibly just move it up and get the information, like, so there's municipalities that took this on a year ago. So we delayed it to January 1st, 2025, but there is some that, so did they not get into where their commercial customers were on their own?
All I can talk to with the working group was through SDG working group, that this was the recommendation. They did talk to some of the senior, I was the chair was talking to other people and about transitions and all this, but I never never talked about how the other ones transition if they just gave it up. So one thing is, after, it's going to be cheaper this year if we contract it out to the contractor, but after this year, 2025 season, after that, January 1st, 26, they cannot do it on the same run. They have to have a separate truck go out and collect from the people. So
Do we, I'll bring it to a vote. Craig, are you comfortable between Blake, yourself, finance, get maybe just a bit more information? I know we've tried, it's not like the lack of, it's just the answers are not fully out there. But if we can buy ourselves 2 weeks, bring it back at the next council meeting, is that sufficient time to?
Yes. I'm just wondering, is it possible for me to, like, we gotta get a handle on exactly, because what we did, we went through the commercial roll numbers and all this stuff, who was doing it, and to approach them directly, saying that it's a transition, and can I discuss that council's looking at, like, say what all the other municipalities, SDG are doing, and say, council's looking at this, we wanna basically see your, advise you that this is a possibility, to see what kind of a response we get back, or we just,
Well, yes, through the chair. I mean, we're discussing this in an open council
Yeah.
meeting now. So yes, there's no secrecy in discussing with the businesses and what our intentions are, what our expectations are. As far as recyclable materials in the future after January 1st, yes, absolutely, we can discuss that.
It's gonna be hard to start getting feedback from Tom, Dick and Harry. So that part, I'm looking more at
The cost.
seeing how many uneligible people that we have to determine, and like, I mean, we give it to one, we're gonna have to give them to all. So that's what we need to identify is that. And then from there, look at trying to get a more realistic cost to what it would be if it's half that. So if you're looking at $4, then you're reducing I'm more giving them the option, the direction where they go for somebody to come. There's many farms that if they're looking at, I'm just using the number, $5 a pickup, would not change anything. And that would just, so it depends on, again, what we're looking at. If we can get more information, bring it back to next council, and hopefully we can make that decision then and move on. Does that make sense with you?
Right.
Right.
And again, through the chair, just to be clear, I think we can easily at least get a very close number on the number of individuals that are affected and the costs associated with the private company doing it, and how much we will actually save with our vehicles and our staff and our fuel not being used to do the pickups. Is that accurate? We should be able to get those numbers fairly easily. I'm looking at the treasurer and public works.
Yes. Again, I just do not want to defeat it and then move. I'd rather
Correct. I don't wanna
defer, and that way it's still on the table. We'll bring it back. So who moved it?
One
Oh,
last,
well, I'll pass it.
one last quick comment. I think, maybe I'm reading this wrong, but throughout the report, part of the reason we kind of provided these services, it just kind of happened out of the goodness of your heart. I think we kind of did this when we didn't even have to do this in the past. So I guess I just want to recognize the fact that, we've been trying to support the community as staff. You've been trying to support the community, but and I just want to appreciate that. And of course, no good deed goes unpunished, right? So, okay, that's great. Thank you.
So the motion's on the table, so I will ask again. So all in favor to carry? Defeat? Defer? So motion is to defer. Do we want to set do we need a firm date? So do we want to set it, bring it back at next council, Mr. CAO?
Through the chair, we should be able to have some hard numbers then.
Perfect. Thank you. Moving on to 9.4, our third quarter variance report.
The Council of the Township of North Stormont accepts report FIN 2024-21 regarding the third quarter variance report ending September 30th, 2024 for information purposes only, moved by Deputy Mayor Denton, seconded by Councilor Vajeli.
Thank you. Any questions or comments in regards to our variance report? Councilor McDonald?
For the FOI, we essentially absorbed a cost that was not charged back to that applicant, I guess.
Through the chair, one of the FOIs, there was a request to reduce the fee, and at the recommendation, administration did reduce the fee.
Thank you. Any other questions? Just go ahead.
Do you know how much is in the cash in lieu fund? And if not, totally fine. You could let me know. I'm just curious about what we're holding there and potentially. Yeah,
Through you,
just
Mr. Mayor.
more thinking towards budget and things we can do, but I am curious about what's in there and how much we have, what we were thinking of doing with it in the future. But it might be it could be for another meeting. There's absolutely no rush on that.
Through the chair, we were waiting for the third quarter payment from GFL while the treasurer is looking for that piece of information. We still have not yet received that amount yet. So certainly I was hopeful we would get it for this variance report, but we hadn't received it as of the agenda time.
Sorry, just bear with me. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have the parkland reserve is 20,000.
Hoping to buy some land. That won't buy us very much. Thank you.
I'll maybe get one. So in regards to, and that will come more at budget as we get through our fourth quarter, but wages when it comes to bylaw enforcement and the revenue. So bylaw and animal control. So where I see we're already at 101% of our, and is that not just basically structured? So do you have
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is split between bylaw and fire, but the split isn't done until year end. So we're going to be transferring money.
back to, which will make more sense when we
Correct,
get to
correct.
the perfect. And then there is one department, I should have wrote it down, that had the opposite, had very low, like we were nowhere near, and I'm not sure if it was planning, I believe maybe. So the wages in planning was not, I'm just scrolling here trying to, I don't know if you can.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, planning seems to be okay. There's one that the wages in public works for regular wages seems low. And that's because we had part-time positions offsetting some sick time and things like that. I think it's under like, I think it's 50%. It's looking low for this time of year, and that's the reasoning behind that.
Okay, maybe it was just, I kind of look at numbers and I was, because I didn't think it was. See, okay, so planning right now, you're looking where you're at 60%. Not that it's a big deal, but is that just because I know we've got where we have, is it under a consultant when we're dealing with the counties? Or how do we work the planning department with Mr. Young and
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you're looking at the summary or a line item in particular.
just as far as wages in the planning development item, line item 1,000 or 8,000-1,000?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's offset by, if you look down below under contracted services, that's the contract with SDG counties.
Which is line, what's the line item there?
It's the last four numbers are 4,700.
Okay.
35,000. I'm sorry, we got him cheap.
Yeah. No, okay, well, that's fine. I was just, like I said, I'm kind of just flaking through and I kind of caught that, so that's good. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of our accepting the variance report? Motion is carried. Delegated authority bylaw.
That the council of the township of North Stormont receives this key information report on delegated authority bylaws for information purposes, moved by Councilor McDonald, second by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to 10.1, bylaw number 86-2024, and tangible capital asset policy.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 86-2024 being a bylaw to adopt policy number FIN 013-2024, the revised tangible capital asset policy for the township of North Stormont be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed this 22nd day of October 2024. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, second by Councilor Jelly.
Perfect. That's just back on our table. Any discussion? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Densham.
Just a quick question. The bylaw number says 86-2024. Is there, but you said 13-2024.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's the policy number. So
Oh,
it's the policy number is the FIN 013-2024, but we're at bylaw number 86.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Next is our bylaw number 87-2024 in regards to reserve funds policy.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 87-2024 being a bylaw to adopt policy number FIN 015-2024, the reserve and reserve funds policy for the Township of North Stormont, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed this 22nd day of October 2024. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
Thank you. Again, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to item 11 in regards to our correspondence.
Be it resolved that the correspondence as listed as items 11.1 to 11.5 on the agenda be received. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
Thank you. Any discussions in regards to correspondence? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Item 12.1, notices of motions.
Whereas the Council of the Township of North Stormont has received a request to support the Castleman Chrysler St. Albert Food Bank with their 2024 Christmas basket operations. And whereas the Council of the Township of North Stormont recognizes the increasing need for food security within our communities. And whereas the ongoing economic challenges have heightened the demand for food assistance. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township of North Stormont hereby commits to providing financial support in the amount of a $500 donation to CCS Food Bank to assist their 2024 Christmas basket operations and ensure they can continue to serve those in need. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Densham.
just a quick comment, because this was, we had a lot of discussion last term around supporting different groups, and I just for the sake of history, it is a slippery slope. When we support different, there's always people who are in need. There's always people who need money. My general practice is don't do fundraising through taxation. People want to support it. Now, this one is the one exception, I guess, that I take, especially given the fact that we're also supporting the food bank in Finch by designating room there. But I just wanted to make a quick note that it is kind of one of the exceptional ones, barring our next discussion. Again, it is an interesting topic, and quite often when we approve requests like this, it can stimulate more. So just a word of caution.
And again, through fundraising, I believe that the holiday train, which is stopping again, well, now it's been many years, but the donation that we get from the, it's not CP Rail anymore, it's Kansas City CPKC. So they last year, I believe it's in the range of 4,000. Now, is that direct at the one food bank, the Winchester Food Bank alone, or is that divided? Is it, from what I understand, I think it's all based to the Finch cupboard through the Winchester. So in this case, this is a smaller amount, but we do get a lot of people from the north end of Chrysler, Moose Creek, maybe the language barrier as well. So we'll attend the Castleman Food Bank, and I'm not sure what the percentage is. So this is something that I think they're working on, and for this kind of request, I would be ready to support it. So I'll put it to a vote with council if we're good. If the motion's on the table, and all in favor. Motion is carried. Now, this might be a little bit more. So, item 12.2 in regards to Maxwell Manor funding support request.
Whereas the Council of the Township of North Stormont has had a presentation and a request for support of the Maxwell Manor redevelopment project. And whereas the Council of the Township of North Stormont recognizes the growing need for quality long-term care services within our communities. And whereas the current capacity of the Maxwell Manor has reached its limits, resulting in lack of beds and inadequate facilities to meet the needs of our aging population. And whereas the proposed expansion of the Maxwell Manor will enhance the quality of care, increase bed availability, upgrade existing infrastructure to meet ministry and community needs and provide modern amenities for residents. And whereas the expansion is expected to create jobs and stimulate the local economy. Therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township of North Stormont hereby commits to providing financial support to Maxville Manor redevelopment project as follows. Total funding commitment of $100,000 over the next 5 years. Funding to be allocated as follows. 2025, 20,000, 2026, 20,000, 2027, 20,000, 2028, 20,000, 2029, 20,000. And further be it resolved that the Township of North Stormont expresses its commitment to supporting the health and well-being of senior citizens and affirms that this expansion is a critical step toward achieving that goal. Moved by Deputy Mayor Denton, seconded by Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. So I don't believe it's so much question, it's more comments. I'll let council take them. Go ahead, Councillor McDonald.
So as a board member on the Manor's Board of Directors, I do know that this is a very pressing need for the Manor. They are looking to fundraise quite a bit of money within the community, and unfortunately as a not-for-profit home, that's the only way that they can sort of find those funds. They're not municipally supported, they're not for-profit, so they're in a bit of a tougher situation. I do know they employ a lot of people, and I know people in North Stormont who do work there and who really enjoy working at the Manor. It's a fantastic facility. If you've had people that you love stay there, or if you've been there, you can tell it is very special. I also know that the project manager has agreed to hire mostly local contractors and firms and whatnot. So I think academic development wise, there's an angle to this as well for us to support. But truly without the funding from municipal partners, private donors, the project will not move forward, and therefore the Manor will have to close because the beds do not meet the new requirements of the province. So it really is sort of a not dire situation, but very a desperate need. And this will go a long way, I know, to helping them and giving everyone confidence that we can get this done. So I do appreciate council considering it, and I hope you will support it.
Thank you. Any questions? Understanding we do not have a long-term care facility in North Stormont, but we do have our aging population that are so North Dundas. Maybe Kim, you can say, are we at year 3? So do we have 2 or 1 year left with
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have 1 more year 2025 budget, and then they're complete.
So for the record, we did support Winchester, basically, which is on east and west of our township, but that do hold a lot of residents that are from North Stormont. So I'll put it through a vote and see about helping out this wonderful venture. So all in favor of the funding allocation as mentioned by our clerk? Motion is carried. So moving on to new business. So the draft 2025 council meeting dates. So do we just, is that something?
Through you,
motion?
Mr. Mayor, I believe it's just to bring the dates forward, and if there's any changes, we can make those and bring this back and officially pass it at the next meeting, if that's correct with the CAO.
Through the chair, that was the intention, just to make sure that all of these dates reflect council's request for the 2025 meeting agenda. I can add that we did amend to incorporate council commitments and professional obligations. We also tried to incorporate some other personal conflicts for council so we can maximize participation in the council dates.
So that's good. So it's made public on our agenda. I believe that council has reviewed it. Sorry, I said go ahead, Deputy Mayor Dench.
Did we, sorry, maybe you meant this when you said it, did we check against conference dates and things like that as well?
Through the chair, professional obligations, I meant OGRA and Roma and AMO, just to make sure that we didn't have any conflicts.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry, the one note I'll make, which I mentioned to the CAO, and I think it's a good provision, November 12th is actually a Wednesday to make room for Remembrance Day, which is on a Tuesday.
If I can make a note, I I haven't missed one yet, but April 8th, I will be out of the country, so I'm just giving a heads up to our deputy mayor to get the opportunity to chair. So with that being said, we have our scheduled scheduled meetings of October 31st, November 12th, October 31st is a committee of adjustment meeting at 8:30 in the morning. November 12th, our regular council meeting, which will be following like tonight, the 6 o'clock start, as well as November 14th for our fire service committee meeting at 6:30. Going on to closed session, there's none, so we will move on to ratification confirming bylaw.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 88-2024 being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify council's actions at its regular meeting of October 22nd, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 22nd day of October 2024. Moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dencham.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. And our adjournment, please.
Be it resolved that this regular meeting adjourn at 8 p.m. Moved by Deputy Mayor Dencham, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Other than our little glitch at the beginning, I think it went well. We hopefully have this now good to go for the next 3 more council meeting, and then hopefully we'll be making a transition to our new building. Thank you very much, council, and everyone enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.